One Birth, Two Treasures. The Billionaire's Sweet Love Chapter 1. I'm not a thief. Within the welfare center's dormitory, a 9-year-old girl faced everyone's suspicions, her eyes red. She had a pair of large, watery eyes and was radiantly beautiful. However, her body looked frail due to malnutrition. Seeing everyone look at her with disdain and hate, she felt wronged and choked. That jade is mine. I'm not a thief. My mom left that behind for me, so what you're saying is that I stole your stuff. Standing opposite her was a girl about her age, tilting her head. The girl eyed her coldly before she turned to smile innocently at the other children. Compared to her, the girl looked sweet and proud, as though she were a lofty little princess showered with everyone's love. As soon as she spoke, the children around them immediately came to her defense. You're obviously lying. You're lying. Why would Rower steal your stuff? Right. That's impossible. How is Rower a thief? Clearly, it's you who stole her thing. Faced with all their condemnations and questions, the girl was unable to give any convincing explanations to defend herself. Absolutely aggrieved, she rubbed her eyes bitterly and burst into tears. That is really my jade. Give it back. Rower eyed her gloatingly and turned to speak to everyone. Everyone, it's clear. Yazhe is the thief. Don't play with her anymore. Thieves are bad. Several children vigorously nodded their heads. Let's listen to Princess Rower. Ignore her in future. She's a thief. Yazhe is a bad girl. Stealing Rower's thing, shame on you. The children roared with laughter as they dispersed. Alone, the girl leaned against a wall. She held back her tears as she gazed at the other children's backs, tightly clenching her fists. A row of men clad in black suits lined up outside the director's office. An energetic-looking elderly man past 50 sat sternly on a sofa. The set of traditional Chinese garments on him enhanced his respectable demeanor, and under the shadows of his brows was an air of fury. He might be getting on in years, his appearance slightly aged. But from his handsome facial features, one could still picture how stunning he looked during his prime. The director brought in a pile of documents, carefully showed them to the elderly man, and respectfully offered them to him. Mr. Mew, these are the children who came into the welfare center last year. All their information is here. Please have a look. The elderly man reached out his hand for the documents, went over some of them, and then furrowed his eyebrows. The assistant by his side caught sight of his expression and raised his head to smile at the director, asking, that child is about 8 to 9 years old. May I ask? Of those who were admitted last year, how many fit this condition? The director briefly went over his memories and swiftly replied, please hold on a moment. The elderly man continued to scan through the documents, yet his eyes were fixed on a family portrait. He suddenly stretched out his hand and pointed. Let me see this girl. The director felt stunned before hurriedly nodding. I understand. I shall arrange for her to meet you fast. He made a call and, soon after, a teacher brought a girl in. Rower diligently stood in front of the elderly man, with her hands to her back and chest puffed up. Grinning from ear to ear, she said, Grandpa, nice to meet you. I'm Rower. The elderly man expressionlessly stared at her and carefully examined every inch of her face. His eyes slowly narrowed as he looked at her darkly and gloomily. Rower curiously wrinkled her brows. This elderly man's fierce-looking face and stern demeanor somewhat frightened her. Just as she retreated a few steps, she saw him suddenly gesture to her. Come. Let Grandpa take a good look at you. Okay. Rower hesitantly took 2 steps forward. The elderly man gently held her shoulders and observed her up close. Despite the compatibility in age, he still felt that neither her appearance nor her facial features were similar to that person. His vision slowly shifted downwards until it landed on the jade near her collarbone. The elderly man held up the piece of jade and softly asked, this jade? Rower stiffened for a moment before smiling sweetly. This jade was given to me by my mother. The elderly man slightly narrowed his eyes. His assistant quickly realized the situation. He hurriedly took out another piece of jade from a briefcase and passed it over to him. The 2 pieces of jade were put together and they fit perfectly. The elderly man's hand slightly shuddered. Upon witnessing this, the assistant understood his intentions and walked over to the director. He muttered a few words to him before taking out a check with a large amount from the briefcase and handing it over to him. The director accepted it with a smile. A row of luxurious, black limousines was parked at the entrance of the welfare center. A desolate-looking girl climbed up the black iron railings in the distance and, with dull eyes, watched Rower follow a group of men in suits and enter an extended Bentley. The moment the doors of the vehicle closed, Rower coldly swept her gaze over to her direction. Coincidentally, their sight collided. Rauer smiled slyly at her before the car windows rolled up and the vehicles drove off into the distance. Thus, the lives of two children took an unexpected turn. One birth, two treasures. The Billionaire's Sweet Love Chapter 2. On one end of a hospital hallway, the accompanying secretary held her phone in one hand and a report in another, presenting from the document. Yazhe, 18 years old, a student. Your father was negligent in his business and went bankrupt. According to investigations, all information is correct. Your overall physical condition is proven fit by the medical tests, and there won't be any issue regarding your custody rights. This girl was regrettably unable to meet the conditions for in vitro fertilization. Then, they could only seek an alternative method. Yazhe sat still on the bench. She gazed at the scenery outside the window. Her expression was strangely calm, yet deep within her watery eyes was complete darkness. Although the young lady's delicate features made her seem even younger, her tender face, as if she had experienced many vicissitudes of life, showed a look that was incompatible to her age. She was the chosen one, the one in a million. Because of her aesthetically pleasing visuals, the remuneration provided by her employer was generous. The sum of $5 million was already astronomical to her. 3 days ago, she secretly signed a contract without her father's knowledge, and then she was brought over to this location. She was locked inside this room every day and was forbidden from contacting anyone outside and, even more so, from going out, as though she were a quarantined patient. She knew that. In order to prepare her for pregnancy, they needed to ensure her health, so that her body would be better suited to carry the baby. The 3 meals made for her a day were extremely exquisite. Ham, bacon, bread, beef, everything was almost too extravagant. She knew that those foods were beneficial to people preparing for pregnancy, so even though she did not like to eat them, she could only forcefully swallow them down. Yazhe dared not disobey any orders, as absolute obedience was one of the conditions stated in the contract. Thus, even today, she faithfully followed her employer's secretary and anxiously came to this private institute to undergo medical examinations. This employer of hers was very mysterious. She had not seen him even once. She only knew of the contract, and that signing it would entitle her to a remuneration of 5 million yuan. This amount should be enough to help her father over